Hello friend, I want to tell you about the Fiat Stilo car. The Stilo is an inconspicuous looking car, cheap to buy and not very popular. Although Fiat is not particularly proud of this model, its users do not complain. Is it a good alternative to the competing compacts, sometimes twice as expensive? Could it be that Fiat looked at the Golf of the time, while trying to create something similar to the Honda Civic 7? Either way, the Stilo is one of the tallest compact cars in history. The interior of the Stilo was designed in German style. It is simple and clear. Most cars were very well equipped, including electric windows and mirrors, air conditioning, ABS, and even ESP, as well as a full set of airbags including curtains. This was standard, although there were minor exceptions. The cabin was also equipped with many practical solutions, including a lot of storage spaces and handles, as well as tables for the rear passengers. The multi-wagon version in particular proved to be extremely functional. Its feature was the ability to open the rear window, not all versions. Technically, the Stilo was no masterpiece. The suspension used the classic McPherson strut and torsion beam, and the drive was transmitted only to the front axle. Even then, a cross-station wagon was being produced with a 20 mm raised ride height, but only with front-wheel drive. The chassis has a soft characteristic, making the Stilo suitable mainly for a quiet, comfortable ride. Only the Abarth version has a differently tuned suspension, but it never became the king of hot hatches. Engines. The Stilo had 4 and 5-cylinder units. The largest engine in the range was a 2.4-liter petrol with 170 hydrogen phosphide, powering the 3-door Abarth version and, less frequently, the regular Fiat Stilo. More normal were of course 4-cylinder engines with capacities from 1.2 liters and 80 HP to 1.8 liters and 133 HP. All naturally aspirated. The range of diesel engines was not particularly extensive, as it consisted of a single 1.9-liter engine in numerous power versions, from 80 to 150 HP. Of course, the individual versions of the JTD engine also differed in design, especially the 140 and 150 HP versions, which received a 16-valve head. Which engine to choose? Rather than the 1.6-liter, 103 hydrogen phosphide, petrol, which has major problems with the equipment, ignition system, and timing drive. The 1.8-liter, 133 hydrogen phosphide engine with a camshaft phase variator is not much better, and you have to be careful with it. Both engines are not very dynamic and fuel-hungry. The larger one also burns a lot of oil. You can try driving on LPG, but in the face of numerous minor electrical faults, this is not a very good solution. If you have to drive petrol, I recommend a simple and proven 1.4-liter engine, which, despite its 95 hydrogen phosphide, accelerates the car quite normally, and impresses with its durability and reliability. In principle, the same can be said about the 1.2-liter petrol with 80 hydrogen phosphide, only it lacks a bit of dynamics. However, for driving only in the city and not very fast on the road, this unit will also do its job. On the other hand, it ensures low operating costs and works efficiently on gas. The situation is completely different with diesel engines. Even the weakest 1.9 JTD diesel engine with 80 HP provides decent dynamics and low fuel consumption. Despite the lack of work culture, it is recommended due to its simple design and durability. As for a modern diesel, it is not particularly difficult or expensive to repair. It has first-generation common rail injection and a simple fixed geometry turbocharger. Unfortunately, it also has a dual-mass flywheel, so the potential expense of replacing the clutch is considerable. This is an expense comparable to good quality 4-ignition coils for a 1.6L petrol. The differences between the 80 and 100 horsepower versions are insignificant. From an operational point of view, it is the same engine. Only the 115 horsepower engine received a variable geometry turbocharger, which improved the smoothness of work when accelerating from low revs. This engine also has significantly greater torque, 255 to 275 Newton meters. This is already a very efficient source of power, which provides good dynamics. The above engines are highly valued for their durability and low operating costs, but they are not without their flaws. They have problems with the EGR system and the flow meter. There are problems with the power supply, fuel pressure regulator, and it is better not to extend the replacement of the timing belt beyond 100,000 kilometers. However, the injection system and the supercharging are durable, and the dual-mass flywheel can be replaced with a set with a fixed flywheel and a different type of clutch. The problem is that these simple engines are usually quite worn out, and after all, buying a diesel is burdened with a considerable risk, but it is worth it. None of the engines will burn more than 6 liters of diesel per 100 kilometers. At the same time, no petrol engine will go below this limit. The second-generation engines, marked as JTD Multijet, are slightly different. The simplest of them and at the same time the most popular was the 120 horsepower version, generating 280 Newton meters. It has an 8-valve head, but also second-generation CR injection and a turbocharger with variable geometry. This did not translate into lower durability or higher failure rate of the injection system and turbocharger, but the engine did not gain much in performance either. The Stilo powered by this unit is just as dynamic as the 115 horsepower version. The 16-valve JTD Multijet engines with 140 and 150 HP have a different design. The first has 305 Newton meters of torque, the second 320 Newton meters. These are very powerful engines, which can easily match the dynamics of even the petrol version of the Abarth, and in everyday use they burn 2 to 3 times less fuel. Unfortunately, there are not very good intake manifold flaps here, which can break off, although it is unlikely that they fall into the engine. Repair costs several $100s, and since this is a known problem of 16-valve JTD multijet engines, there is no problem finding the right specialist or spare parts. To sum up, although diesel engines are potentially more expensive to repair, they are better in terms of operation than petrol engines. They are more dynamic and burn less fuel. Petrol engines can be troublesome in terms of equipment failures, especially 1.6 and 1.8, while smaller ones have power shortages. If I recommend anything, it is basically only the 1.4 engine for a leisurely ride, optionally 1.2, and it is best to choose a diesel. To put it bluntly, if you do not want a diesel, it is best to choose another car. For example, it's hard to honestly recommend the 170 bhp 2.4-liter petrol. It's a gas guzzler, not entirely fault-free, and generally generates high maintenance costs. Many repairs will be more expensive because of the 5 cylinders. In addition, it was often combined with the problematic Cellespeed semi-automatic gearbox, which only deepens the costs. What's broken? In general, apart from the drive, Stilo is not a particularly failure-prone model. It does not corrode and maintains the interior quality set by the manufacturer well. The rich equipment of the car does not break down, although the airbag, plug under the seat, sometimes disconnects. The suspension is simple, although not cheap to service. The torsion beam is not completely maintenance-free. After 50-100,000 kilometers, the bushes on which it is suspended must be replaced. They can squeak and after some time they get loose, which should not happen with average driving anyway. Contrary to appearances, the car is not very problematic, and above all, it does not generate high operating costs, provided that we choose versions 1.2, 1.4 or 1.9 JTD. Its failure rate is average, and durability is quite good. The car is easy to repair, and parts are often ridiculously cheap. It is easier to buy a well-maintained Stilo than most other compact cars. It was not a popular model, so, like Citroën, it was chosen rather by individualists. It depends. Generally, you have to be a Fiat lover or looking for a possibly cheap, modern car to choose this model. If you need a spacious, very cheap car with a weak petrol or diesel engine, weak or strong, then the Stilo is for you. You won't pay much for it, and with a little care the car will go for a long time. Generally, after a few years of use, you can come out ahead of other models, even if you visit the mechanic more often than others. Stilo is not a car for someone who needs a reliable car, but for everyday driving, on not too long distances, it is just right. Is Fiat Stilo a better car than the competing Golf IV, for which you have to pay more? If we are only assessing the interior of the 5-door version, which may be crucial for some, then definitely yes. Thanks for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know of any problems with this car that I haven't mentioned, be sure to write about them in the comments.
I have good news for you. Now, if you are planning to buy a used car, or learn more about your car, you no longer need to search for the information you need on the internet. We have collected everything in one place for you, on the website carme.pro. Here you can find out everything about the car, what breaks and at what mileage, any problems with engines, chassis or gearboxes, which trim levels are better not to mess with, and how not to lose money buying a used car. You will learn all this on carme.pro.